At around 4:30 a.m., our satellites detected a storm approaching the Ares 3 mission site on Mars. The storm had escalated to severe, and we had no choice but to abort the mission. But during the evacuation, astronaut Mark Watney was killed.
I think The Martian is a very well adapted screenplay by Drew Goddard of the book, and very faithful to the book. So when I read both, there was not just the puzzle of science in there, which I knew kind of intuitively reading it, it was correct, probably absolutely on the money. I loved that, but I loved that tied in very closely to a very strong character who was full of the right stuff. So he would not allow fear, terror, to make him succumb to him saying, oh God, I'm gonna die.
I'm still alive. Surprise.
Ridley Scott is the best at creating these worlds, and there really wasn't a lot that you had to imagine when you went on the set. The set was really one of the most incredible things I've ever seen and ever been a part of. Even just there was this mass, the beginning when we're in this sandstorm on Mars, even that stuff, when you're looking at it on screen, that's exactly how it looked and felt. It's not CGI. There were these massive fans that they had blowing, and the dust that they were just sort of throwing into the fans. All of that stuff was actually happening.
1,200 kilometers in diameter, bearing 24.41 degrees.
That's tracking right towards us.
Based on current escalation, estimated force of 8,600 newtons.
What's the abort force?
7,500.
Let's wait it out.
Prep emergency departure. We're scrubbed, that's an order.
Ridley, I'd worked with on American Gangster, and he's such a sort of deeply kind of charismatic man as well as everything else, and going into his imagination is always such a sort of three-dimensional experience, and the way that he approaches cinema is always this completely immersive idea, and so it's always fun to go into the mind of Ridley Scott, and it's always a cool place to hang out.
Mark Watney is still alive.
I was thinking that if we ever get tired of a man by himself, I've got somewhere to go to give him a break, as it were, because I've got the universe of NASA, the universe on board the ship that have gone home and don't know that he's alive, and the universe of JPL. And so there's always somewhere to go to on that wheel to keep the dynamics of information interesting.
It's really three different movies kind of all combined into one. We shot, I shot obviously with the other astronauts, and I only just met Chiwetel and Jeff Daniels and all of those people who worked in the NASA aspects of the film. We're in this movie together, but really we were all shooting in very isolated periods.
Jessica Chastain and Michael Pena and Kate Mara and everybody didn't start until after we finished, and then I think we'd all wrapped collectively, we'd all finished making the film before Matt Damon arrived to make the film. So in that way, yes, it was very separated and compartmentalized, but it always felt part of one narrative.
If we could talk to Mark, we would tell him to stay put and to trust that we are doing everything in our power to bring him home alive.
Don't say bring him home alive, Vincent.
You know what? These interviews aren't easy.
Annie?
No more Vincent on TV. Copy that.
76 kilometers. Am I reading that right?
Yes, sir. Mark drove 2 hours straight away from the hab, did a short EVA, and then drove for another 2.
You didn't load up the oxygenator or the water reclaimer?
Every 41 hours, there's a 17-minute gap.
I want that gap down to 4 minutes. Let's make it happen. Bruce, what's the earliest we can get a pre-supply there?
It'll take 9 months.
3 months. Get started. I'll find you the money.
We'll do our best.
Mark dies if you don't.
It was a relief in a way not being a fantasy, which is a Prometheus fantasy. Alien's a fantasy, really. Blade Runner's a fantasy. But this was real, and so there was it was easier, because we knew we'd get a lot of help from NASA, who loved the book. This has been watched in the International Space Station last week, so that was approval, and I think they were very bemused by the attitude of the astronaut, and of course Matt's the perfect astronaut, and I think they liked his courage. You don't let it go. If you let it go, you're going to die. They were very helpful.
In the face of overwhelming odds, I'm left with only one option. I'm gonna have to science the hell out of this. Okay, let's do the math. I gotta figure out how to grow 4 years worth of food here on a planet where nothing grows.
Ridley doesn't really want to interfere with the process of being an actor. So he's very happy to let you do whatever you want to do, but will occasionally come up and say things like, you know, I didn't see this scene this way. I love it. You know, which kind of gives you an inclination that he has a very specific idea of what he thinks the kind of the base is, you know, how it would work, you know, and how it would be interesting. But if you bring something different to that, he's happy to be surprised.
You just feel safe. I mean, you feel very, very safe, but also there's this freedom that he gives you as an actor that is really remarkable, given the fact that he knows exactly what he wants.
When I first arrived in Budapest, he showed me all the models he had for the spaceship and just what he was going to do with the movie. And, you know, I wish I'd kind of been able to record it, you know, just this conversation, because it's completely fascinating how he holds the film in his head and holds the visual aspects of it and the technical. You know, there's a part of the film where I have the Pathfinder, you know, in front of me, and Matt Damon has the Pathfinder that is actually on Mars. And on set we had an exact replica of the Pathfinder that is on Mars, you know, and that's kind of you know, symbolic of the way that Ridley works and wants the actors to be totally in the experience.
And now we're accelerating towards Mars. You're Mars. Now we're going too fast at this point to fall into orbit, but we can do a flyby.
Watney would intercept using the MAV.
And then we just head home. I done the math. Checks out.
Once you're going on a ship to Mars, there is no reason for streamlining. So I think the Martian ship will be assembled rather like a Lego kit, rather like International Space Station, because you can just shoot down the road 100,000 miles an hour without a nose cone. That's what will happen. It'll be assembled bit by bit for the 9-month there, 9-month back journey. So we kept it gnarly and Lego-y. We desperately wanted gravity because I didn't want everyone floating around wires throughout the whole bloody movie. And so went back to Stanley, watched his wheel, measured it, saw what the diameter was, and realized we couldn't afford it. So we did half a wheel, which would give you a 15-second swing. That's what it does. In the 15 seconds, you get the illusion, oh, this is the wheel. Because outside the window, I've got digital effects of, if I'm on the axis here of the end of a wheel, which is 5 miles an hour, so that 5 miles an hour, you've got gravity, 5 miles an hour. What I see outside is the ship is doing that. But when I'm on the ship looking back, the wheel is turning around, the girl's going upside down. So I thought that was pretty successful.
In your face, Neil Armstrong.
It was so exciting to actually see the film for the first time, because even knowing, you know, a lot of that stuff that Matt shot was shot in the same soundstage that we shot all of our things in, and you completely forget that. I mean, it feels like they're shooting in another world, and it was really just amazing to see what he did with all of that, because most of his stuff is by himself, and yet you never feel it. You feel as though you know, he's got all this other help around him, but that's just Matt Damon being, you know, the incredible, the talented guy that he is. I mean, I think it takes a lot to have somebody that an audience wants to watch for that long and root for.
You can take the film on any level you want. You know, you can take the film as a kind of a very sort of straightforward, heroic narrative that's very sort of cinematic and engaging. You can take it on the sort of very intellectual route of science and responsibility. I think it encapsulates all of those things. It's a film of our time, and I think, and that's what makes it exciting and accessible. And I hope that people see it and are re-engaged with not only space exploration and so on, but these ideas of communal responsibility and self-responsibility.